Stranger Things Season 5 has finally arrived on Netflix, and while fans are excited and the hype is huge, the newest season has quietly continued one of Netflix's most worrying trends. The show is still incredibly popular, and the buzz around its final season is probably higher than anything Netflix has released before. Because Season 4 ended on a massive cliffhanger and people have been waiting for years to see what happens next, Stranger Things Season 5 has been treated like a global TV event even before release. Netflix dropped Volume 1 with 4 new episodes, and because of the platform's classic binge model, most viewers have already watched the whole thing. Fan reactions on places like IMDb have been mostly positive, with many saying the visual effects, the dark tone, and the build up to the finale are exciting. But when you look deeper and check the reviews from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, you start to see a slightly concerning pattern. Stranger Things Season 5 is not being trashed at all. In fact, critics still like it, but the score shows a drop that has been happening season after season. This decline isn't dramatic, but it's steady, and that's what fans and Netflix observers find worrying. Stranger Things started strong with a near-perfect 97% critic score for Season 1, which came with a lot of mystery and fresh storytelling. Season 2 went down slightly to 94%, and Seasons 3 and 4 dropped again to 89%. Now, Season 5 has opened at 87%. That number is still good enough to count as a big success, since almost 9 out of 10 critics gave it a positive review. But the downward trend clearly shows that critics aren't as impressed as they once were. It might also indicate that the show is ending at the right time before the magic begins to fade too much. Even though the audience score remains strong, in fact, Season 5 has a 92% audience score at launch, the critics' slow decline points towards something changing with how the show is being experienced. So the main question is, why is Stranger Things Season 5 getting the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score in the show's history, and what does this mean for Netflix? When you look at the reviews more closely, a few common points stand out. One of the biggest issues critics highlight is that Stranger Things Season 5 is extremely ambitious. The Duffer Brothers are clearly trying to go as big as possible for the final chapter, which means more storylines, more locations, more monsters, more mysteries, and more characters doing their own separate missions. Because of that, the show starts to feel a little too big for its own good. A Screen Rant's review described this ambition as a double-edged sword. The massive scope of the story is exciting, but it also makes everything feel a bit overloaded. Critics say the narrative is too spread out and not as emotionally tight as the earlier seasons. In Season 5, the characters are once again split into many small groups, each discovering their own secrets and fighting their own battles. Some critics feel that this structure makes the season feel scattered, with less emotional connection between the characters. Comic book also mentioned pacing issues, pointing out that splitting the characters into multiple storylines again makes some scenes feel repetitive. They argue that the show already struggled with this in Season 4, and Season 5 brings the same problem back on an even bigger scale. Slate's review was one of the few very negative ones. He's saying that Stranger Things Season 5 gets tangled in stagnant characters and snarled lore. For them, the plot becomes so large and complicated that it forgets to focus on the heart of the show, the relationships and emotional moments. These negative comments, however, are not the majority. Most critics still like the season, and the flaws in are often mentioned inside overall positive reviews. Many critics agree that Stranger Things Season 5 is still thrilling, emotional, even visually if it's not as clean or as tight as Season 1 or Season 2. So it's not a Game of Thrones situation where the show completely collapses in its final chapter. Instead, the reaction is more like great, but not perfect. Another reason the score may be lower is that expectations are extremely high. Since people have been waiting so long for this season and the show is ending, every reviewer is looking for that perfect mind-blowing finish. Any small weak spot becomes more noticeable. A show that once amazed critics simply doesn't surprise them as much anymore because they've been watching it for 8 years. Now, the big question remains is can Stranger Things Season 5 end on a high note, or will the declining critic score continue? At the moment, critics have only seen the first 4 episodes in Volume 1. Volume 2, with 3 new episodes, is coming on Christmas Day 2025, and the final feature-length finale will drop a week later on New Year's Eve. The entire ending of the show is still hidden, so critics haven't seen the part that will probably carry the most emotional weight. The issues reviewers mentioned so far, like fragmented storytelling, slow pacing, and less emotional connection, can be fixed once the storylines merge and all characters reunite for the final world-ending battle against Vecna. Usually in Stranger Things, the final episodes bring everyone together, and that's when the most emotional and powerful moments happen. So critics might respond much better to the next 2 volumes, especially if the Duffer Brothers manage to deliver a strong, satisfying ending. It's very possible that the last episodes will bring back that sense of emotional depth that made the earlier seasons so beloved. Once the characters return to each other and face the biggest danger Hawkins has ever seen, the emotional impact that critics say is missing in Volume 1 may come back stronger than ever. Even if the later volumes of Season 5 receive similar scores to Volume 1, the entire season will still be considered very successful. An 87% critic score is still extremely high, especially for a final season of a global hit show. What matters more is whether audiences continue to enjoy the story and feel satisfied with how the journey ends. Right now, the audience score is going up, which means fans are happy. Netflix may still worry because this trend doesn't just affect Stranger Things. Many of their big shows start with high critic scores and slowly decline season after season. But for Stranger Things specifically, the story is far from ruined. In fact, it might still end in a way that becomes one of Netflix's biggest cultural moments ever. Fans will ultimately decide if Stranger Things wrapped up as a masterpiece or just a good finish, but looking at the reactions so far, things are still very positive. The drop in Rotten Tomatoes score is noticeable, but the excitement isn't dying. Critics are still mostly impressed, and fans continue to call it one of the best Netflix productions ever. As long as the final battle with Vecna delivers emotional moments, strong character decisions, and a satisfying conclusion, Stranger Things can still end on a huge high note. Right now, it's still on track to end as one of Netflix's most iconic shows, even with a slightly lower critic score than previous seasons.